once you kind of hit that number, it's almost like you can breathe. You have space in your life to think a little more creatively, to design life a little more, to kind of mold life a little more to how you want it to look, and to think a little bigger too. And that space has been like transformative for me of how can I help people more? What other businesses can I start? How can I grow my existing businesses? Like all that stuff becomes more fun than pressure and stress. And so, for me, success looks like space in my life.
G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Jordan Berry from Laundromat Resource. He's based in Hawaii, United States. Thanks for your time today, Jordan.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm super excited about it.
Me too. How we know each other, Ernesto Kalari from Kalari Wardell, who we had on almost a year ago, episode 561 in September 2024, put us in touch, and we've obviously just had a quick chat, well, not a quick chat, a long chat before we hit record, and I'm really excited to hear about your journey and all the wisdom you're going to provide the audience.
Yeah, a lot of hard-earned and expensive wisdom coming your way here in a minute.
Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
Yeah, so I'm in the laundromat space, and laundromats are just an interesting business. They've actually kicked up in a lot of popularity over the last few years. A lot of content creators on YouTube and stuff, Cody Sanchez, some other people have been promoting these quote unquote boring businesses, and then a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram and stuff have been posting videos of collecting fat wads of cash in buckets full of quarters, and it's caught the attention of a lot of people. And so laundromats have become very popular, but I was around before laundromats were cool. And we make money by letting people pay us to do their own laundry. That's the essence of the business.
And how did you start out?
So leading up to it, I actually was a pastor for a bunch of years and a youth pastor, worked in churches, and got to a point, I have 2 kids. They were young at the point, maybe like 3 and 1 years old. And it was just getting time to, move on and do something different as a career vocationally, and was trying to figure out what to do. I didn't really have any direction on where to go. And I had this genius idea. I'm originally from California. So I had this genius idea that we should rent out our house in Southern California and take our money in the bank and go rent out or go buy a condo on the beach in Hawaii and do whatever for job. I don't know, sell jewelry on the beach. Who cares? We're in Hawaii, right? And my wife said we could do that, or we could buy a laundromat. And so we ended up buying a laundromat, and it wasn't till a year later that we ended up here in Hawaii. But that story, there's a lot of stuff that happened in that 10 years that did not go according to plan. But the idea behind buying the laundromat was income coming in with very little time going out, invested into bringing that money in. Maybe not passive, but close to it, right? So that was the idea behind it. And it ended up working the exact opposite way, where I spent a lot of time at that laundromat while losing a whole lot of money.
And is that just down to the location? What were the main issues there?
Yeah, so a couple things. I mean, number one, I knew zero about business. I knew zero about investing. I knew zero about real estate investing. I knew zero about any of that stuff. And so really, I relied almost entirely on one of the people that stood to benefit from me buying a business, which was the broker. And it just turned out I ran into, by chance, a broker that did not have my best interest in mind and sold me a dream that I now know was never going to become a reality with that specific location. So part of it was the location. Part of it was, this was what we call them zombie mats in our industry. It's, a fixer-upper laundromat. It's one of those ones that a lot of people think of when they think of laundromat, like half the lights are out, half the machines don't work, people sleeping in there, doing whatever. And the idea was to come in and turn it around and put new stuff in there and step to profit, right? And it just didn't turn out to be as easy as I was told it was going to be. So yeah, so location played part of it into it. And just the business itself, it was a rough neighborhood. I had some encounters with gang members. This was in East LA. and just all kinds of problems that I was not prepared for at all.
Right.
And on top of not knowing anything about business. So
Yep.
yeah.
And so was that 2015 you started?
That was 2014, I think. Yeah. Yeah,
And
2014.
how old were you then, 11 years ago, when you decided to start?
So I guess I'm 43 now, so I guess I was 32.
Yep. Right.
And 32 seems young these days. I don't know.
Yeah. And you've also got another element or part of the business as well, haven't you? Want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So, okay. So when I bought my first laundromat, like I said, it did not go well. I was losing a lot of money. I couldn't find answers to what I was doing wrong. Like everything I read online, everything I heard, this is an easy business. And I couldn't figure out, I heard 95% success rate. That number still floated around to this day. I don't exactly know where that number comes from. And while I do think laundromats have a high success rate, I think 95 might be a little high based on what I'm seeing. But all that to say, like it like wounded me to be in the 5% of people that couldn't figure out this easy business, right? And I couldn't figure out where to get help. There really was nothing online yet. There was no YouTube channels, no blogs, anything like that. And so I just kind of suffered through it and just sort of endured. And like I said, learned a lot of expensive lessons along the way. And eventually started getting stuff sorted, getting stuff figured out, started figuring out some things, started meeting people in the industry that were crushing it, that were just building the lives of their dreams through these weird little businesses. So I decided to start sharing some of these expensive lessons. So I started a little blog, and then I realized that writing takes a long time and is difficult. So I started a YouTube channel so I could just sit there and talk to people. And that started going pretty well, and started gaining some traction. And then I was like, well, if I really want to help myself learn the business and help other people learn the business, I should talk to the people who are doing the best in the business. So I started a podcast, about 5 years ago or so. And a little over 200 episodes in, not nearly as many as you are, crushing it over there, but a couple hundred episodes in, and have just been sharing that. And so through those platforms, there's a community has come together, and we've got some education courses, and we've got some consulting, consulting team that we have to help people get into the business the right way the first time. Because if you can do that, this business is a very attractive business to be in.
So do you still own any of your own laundromats? If so, how many kind of since that first failed one?
Yeah. So after that first one, before I figured it out, I ended up buying a second one. I found an owner financing, seller financing deal with the real estate in Los Angeles. It was a deal I just felt like I couldn't pass up. So I bought that one and ran those two for a while. I've bought and sold some other ones, and I've been in partnerships kind of along the way. So that original one, I finally sold maybe 2 years ago. It sort of served its purpose. And then we also bought a house out here in Hawaii. So it was too small really to keep and manage remotely. So we sold that. So now the laundromats I own remotely and through partnerships, and a management system. And I'm also eyeballing some laundromats out here in Hawaii right now too. So
Right. Awesome. Yeah, great.
yeah. Yeah.
And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the 11 years?
Yeah. So when I bought that first one, I was told it was doing about $10,000 to $12,000 gross a month. It turned out it was doing about 6 a month. And, listen, I'm just going to share the good, the bad, the ugly, the embarrassing.
Yeah.
One of the embarrassing is that the broker told me, like, hey, look, we know this laundromat's really not making money. It's breaking even. We got to buy some new machines and stuff. So I thought it was breaking even. Turns out it was losing quite a bit of money from the get go. The broker told me you don't really need to do any due diligence because we know like this is we're going to be improving the business, right? And so I thought I was starting from a break even point, and I wasn't. I was already behind the eight ball. I didn't really do any due diligence, hardly at all. Um, Listen, nobody listening to this podcast is going to make that mistake, and they should thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I made that mistake, and it's embarrassing to this day, but that's just a reality, right? And if you don't know what you don't know. So anyways, I was making about 6,000 gross a month, which was a big kind of punch to the gut when I started to put the pieces of the puzzle together here. And it probably only got up to maybe making 8 or 9,000 gross a month by the time I bought that second one, not even a year later. So it still was not profitable. It was on the incline, but it was still not profitable. That second one was doing about 13,000 a month gross, and net it was, we're sitting at a little over 40% margins there. So maybe at about, 6 grand, 6,500, something like that, a month of net. And then both have grown from there. All in total now from all the locations, we're looking at about 50,000 a month gross, with again, a little, we're right, almost right at 45% margins on
Wow.
that.
That's great. So about a bit over 22 grand net a month profit. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting about this business is, and it's a little bit shocking, but I've seen this proven out over and over again. The majority of people out there could replace their 9 to 5 income with 1 or 2 laundromats. Like that's all it takes, which is just crazy. And I think it's like, to your credit and the credit of, all the people we've had on the show, right? Like small business, it's such a powerful tool to use to achieve financial freedom or whatever your lifestyle goals are, right? And even a business as simple as like a little laundromat can change your life. It's pretty exciting for such a boring business.
Yeah. And out of interest, the laundromat's generally valued on a multiple of sales or profit.
Profit, net income. Yeah. And so the industry average has been about 3 to 5.
Yep.
However, because of the growing popularity and in addition to, we're finally getting some new technology into our industry. We have not had technology in our industry until maybe like the last 2 years, genuinely. But because of that, it's becoming easier to manage multiple locations and manage more sophisticatedly. And so we've seen multiples rise. So I'm seeing averages more like 4.5 to 5.5 now, which is still
Yep.
pretty good.
Mm.
You're looking at like a 17, 18% return on your money,
Yep.
unleveraged. And then if you at the top end, and then if you use leverage to acquire it, it can go beyond that. And then obviously if you improve it, it can go even beyond that. So
Yep.
lots of upside potential there.
And number of full-time equivalent team members you started with and where you're at now? You just started on your own?
Yeah, well, I had one employee when I started. I pretty quickly had to let that employee go because I was just losing so much money, and I had just quit my job and was not prepared for that. I would undercapitalize, which I think is a pretty common mistake that people
Yep.
make when acquiring a business. But I was undercapitalized, so it quickly became just me. I was doing all the everything, cleaning every night and doing the books and trying to do marketing, even though I didn't know what I was doing, all that stuff. And now I believe we're up to seven full time, which is another attractive thing, right? Of laundromats is you really don't need a whole lot of employees, depending on your business model.
In that 7, those 7 that's just in the laundromat business, not in the coaching and the.
Yeah, correct.
Great.
Yeah,
Wow.
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
You know what? Well, first of all, that succeeded definition kind of always moves. So I'm not sure that I fully feel like that. However, what I will say is, when I first started the online stuff, I didn't start as an online business. I just started trying to help people online. And for 2 years, I did free consulting for people, which on the one hand felt weird because I was like not too far out of feeling like the world's worst laundromat owner. And I was like helping people. But there was one consulting, well, not client, but because they weren't paying me anything, but somebody was like, hey, listen, you got to find a way for me to be able to pay you because you just saved me. It was like $50,000 for this, that one piece of advice I gave him saved him $50,000. And I felt like, okay, all the suffering, all the misery of trying to figure, like losing all this money, feeling like a failure, feeling like I was in the bottom 5%. I've never been in the bottom 5% of anything in my life, right? And feeling like I was in the bottom 5%. And I lost well into the 6 figures of money, learning all this stuff along the way. And like that moment was the moment where I was like, okay, some good can come out of this, even if it's not directly for me, which it has been for me directly. But at that point, I wasn't making any money from any of it. But if for somebody, it's paying off and there's some value there. So that felt like a big moment of success for me.
What does success look like to you?
Well, now, I mean, like I said, my definitions of success is always evolving. There's been dollar figures attributed to that. One thing that I feel like everybody should shoot for is, hitting sort of whatever that financial freedom number is for you that you've can work, don't have to work kind of thing. What I found for me and what I've, talking with other people, once you kind of hit that number, it's almost like you can breathe. You have space in your life to think a little more creatively, to design life a little more, to kind of mold life a little more to how you want it to look, and to think a little bigger too. And that space has been like transformative for me of, how can I help people more? What other businesses can I start? How can I grow my existing businesses? Like all that stuff becomes more fun than pressure, and stress. And so, for me, success looks like space in my life, to be able to spend time with my family, to be able to work on the things I want to work on, to be able to be creative. I mean, we live across the street from the beach in Hawaii now, so surfing with the kids across the street or spearfishing when the waves are terrible, all that stuff just looks like success to me. And it's less tied to a number now, but that's only, I think, because I'm past the number I needed to be at, to feel like I can have that space. So that's where I'm at right now.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
The customer experience is everything. Laundromats are traditionally like self-serve, and I get in this debate in this industry a lot because it's been a very hands-off, like set it and forget it type business. But thinking through customer experience, like the devil is in the details in that stuff, but it doesn't take a whole lot to make a really big difference, right? And so thinking of, especially in our industry, right? Laundries, I always joke it's like America's least favorite chore, most hated chore, right? Maybe Australia and Tasmania too, I don't know. But it's not a love chore by many people. And so if you can figure out a way to make it just a little bit easier, just a little bit more enjoyable for a customer, and it doesn't take much. For example, having our employees learn the names of 2 new customers a day. If they can learn the names of 2 new customers a day, people love it when you remember their names and remember something about them, right? And so we're very intentional about that, making sure in our industry, right, like making sure everything's clean and tidy. Doesn't take a lot, but it's just paying attention to the details, right? All these kind of little things sort of add up to just to provide an experience for the customers. And we always talk about, right, like customers buy based on how you make them feel. And so if you can associate positive feelings with your business, you've won a customer for life right there.
How did you fund the business?
Yeah, so that very first laundromat, I bought all cash. I believe we paid $65,000 for it cash. Again, a big fixer-upper laundromat, so not a huge investment there. And then we put all the new equipment and stuff. We paid cash for, not the equipment, but we paid cash for most of the renovations. And then I ended up doing a bunch of renovations as I started to realize, oh, this thing's losing money. So I did a lot of that work. And then we put in new equipment in it, and we did 100% financing on all the new equipment for that business. So not only were we losing money, but now we had a loan payment on top of that, to deal with. So that was fun. And then kind of going beyond that, we did some seller financing deals. We've done some traditional bank loans. We've done some private money, raised money from, investors and stuff, and through some partnerships.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I love what I love about this industry is that, again, like a lot of people are looking for financial freedom or replace their 9 to 5 job. And I don't know how it is there, but here in the States, the hot thing has been real estate, right? Financial freedom through real estate investing. We have like bigger pockets, which is really promoting that. But the problem with real estate, and I invest in real estate and I love real estate. I have residential, I've got commercial, I've got short-term rentals, long-term rentals. I have real estate and I love it, but by and large, cash flow and real estate cannot touch small business cash flow, right? Like you already know this. Everybody listening to this already knows this. Small business cash flow is so much better as long as you do it correctly than real estate. And so that means you can hit that financial freedom number a lot quicker and then go do real estate or whatever else you want to do. So, the cash flow side of small business it's just hard to beat. It's just hard to beat. So, if I was going back into this business, I would go into it for the cash flow and then use the cash flow to do other things if I want to, whether that's for fun or for business.
Yep. And with the laundromat sites, generally, do you buy the property, the land, as well as the business?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends, like, here in the States, right, on the coasts, most of the time, you're just buying the business and leasing the space. Not all the time, like I said, I bought in LA, I bought real estate with the laundromat, and so you can. But on the coast, real estate tends to be more expensive and doesn't come up for sale quite as often. If you're in the middle of the country where we're at in the States, the property is usually cheaper and you're more likely to buy the real estate. So it's both and. You can buy the business and lease the space, or you can buy the business and the real estate and own both and let the business pay for the real estate, which is usually preferable if you have the option.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Yeah. Yeah. So, in those early days of that first laundromat when I was losing a lot of money, again, not having any business knowledge or experience or anybody to really that I knew of to reach out to, I did the one thing that you can't do when you're losing money, and I sort of turtled up, right? And I got into protective mode. And so one of the first things to go for me, and I think for a lot of people, is the marketing budget, right? You stop investing money and getting new but it's really the only thing that can help you save your business, right? Is like getting new customers in and then taking care of them once they get in to your business inside your doors, right? And so I stopped doing that, which just exacerbated everything, made the pain a lot worse, made the problem a lot worse, and made it take a lot. It probably added 2 years to hitting any kind of meaningful profitability for that first laundromat there because I turtled up. And there were some dark days at that point in time. And again, this is not typical of all laundromats, but the owner before I bought it totally let the laundromat go, and it genuinely became, again, East LA, genuinely became gang turf. And so I had some physical altercations with the gang multiple times in that laundromat. So not only am I losing money, I'm also fighting people in my laundromat. So it was not a good time. So two lessons there is don't stop marketing when you're losing money and don't buy a business where you got to fight gang members. Nah, it's not advisable.
You could make that into a reality TV show these days, I reckon.
Oh gosh, I thought that over and over and over again. Yeah, this would have been great TV, but it was not great to live it. I'll tell you that.
So it sounds like you're overpaid for that first laundromat then.
Yeah, I overpaid for it, but really, I mean, it's not so much that I overpaid, like, I should have been able to make it profitable, I just didn't know what I was doing, in
Yeah.
addition to paying too much and not having guidance, like, I just didn't know what I was doing, and I made some pretty critical, poor decisions along the way.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
I mean, again, just gonna go back to customer service or hospitality, customer experience, that is something. So one thing that I learned with that first one is that it was a lot easier to rehab the laundromat than it was to rehab the reputation of the laundromat. And that I think is something that I would put 100%, 1,000% more focus into if I was to go back and buy a fixer-upper laundromat. I would be almost before fixing up the laundromat, I'd be working on the reputation of the laundromat, both like online, but also just in the community itself, trying to clean up the reputation of the laundromat. Because when people decide like, hey, that laundromat's dangerous or it's gang territory or whatever, guess what? It's gonna take a long time for them to believe that it's safe to go back there and okay to go back there and is their best option.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Yeah. Man, you know what? The one thing about running a business like a laundromat or a lot of businesses actually is sort of that so I think of the E-Myth Revisited, right? The book, and they talk about the franchise model, even if you're not a franchise, right? Like delivering a consistent experience over and over and over. And for me, listen, classic entrepreneur over here. I love new things, launching new things, coming up with new ideas, starting a new business. I love doing all the new stuff, right? The new stuff, and having to just like manage and maintain the same experience day in and day out, making sure like that feels like death to me. So it's
Yeah.
kind of that same thing over and over and over again. That is my nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Around
been
the
the
clock.
toughest.
Yeah. And what do you love
Yeah.
most about growing a small business?
The people, man. I mean, listen, I've been in East LA, I've been in South Central LA. That's where all the like 90s gangsters rappers on the west side are from, South Central LA, Compton, that area. And I have found that even in those kind of quote unquote rough areas, like 98% of the people are great. And it's 2% of the people that cause the majority of the problems. And they end up causing those problems for the people that live in the community too. They feel the same problems, right? And so really like, especially with laundromats, but really in business in general, just like getting to know the people, whether it's the employees or the customers, and getting to be, make a difference, and one of the things I love about laundromats is that you have the opportunity to make a genuine, tangible difference in a community in a variety of different ways. And in a lot of communities, it's one of the last places people come to gather as a community to do so, other than maybe like a craft brewery or a bar or something like that, right? There's very few of those places left, and laundromats are one of them, and you can make a big difference there.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Listen, because of my experience early on, and I think a little bit just about how I grew up, I've had a very like DIY mindset, kind of lone wolf type mindset where I feel like I have to do stuff. And so making that transition from me doing everything to hiring people and sort of that buy back your time. I don't know if you read that book, but that book was a game changer for me too. But that sort of buy back your time concept,
Yep, I'm Marcel.
hiring people, yeah, Dan Martell, and leveling up the not even just your dollar per hour activities, but just the things that trying to get to a point where you're only doing things that only you can do. I think that was a huge mindset shift for me. Definitely a game changer.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
So, honestly, like investing in yourself. I think the best investments I've made have not been in marketing and haven't been in a specific business, been investing in myself. I know we'll probably talk about this a little bit, but like I spend a lot of money every year to be a part of groups and to do education that is helping me to grow. I prefer to learn that way than to make very expensive, painful mistakes like I did early on. And I found that not only is it easier to learn that way, but it's more fun and it's a whole lot faster to learn that way too. So investing in yourself, best thing you can do.
Are you a small business owner who is ready to take your professional growth to the next level? Sign up to the Grow a Small Business Weekly newsletter. This is your go-to email every Friday and will take about 2 minutes to read. Join the Grow a Small Business community who, like you, are investing in their professional development. Each week, we curate valuable resources, whether it's expert advice, books, podcasts, industry insights, or actionable strategies. We've got you covered. Leave your email at growasmallbusiness.com/weekly. Can you talk how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Yeah. So, listen, I think number one, you got to be very clear on what it is you want them to do and how you want them to do it. Not necessarily in terms of like micromanaging, like, I want you to fold your clothes like this, maybe a little bit of that too, but more in terms of, values and the attitude you want them to have, the culture. Really, it's the culture, right? The culture that you're creating. So you got to be very clear on what you want them to do and that culture that you want them to operate from within, and then holding them accountable to that. Where I found it to be the most difficult was when I was desperate, right? Like when business was not going well, or I was spending my time on other stuff and I just didn't have time. And so I needed like a body. That's where I ran into the most trouble. I've had employees who, one time I rolled up to the laundromat and my attendant was in some guy's face, just screaming at a customer for I don't even know what. I mean, I let her go right there on the spot. She was otherwise a relatively nice lady, but just not the right fit. That's not the culture that I want, right? I don't want my employee yelling in front of the laundromat, in front of everybody, making a big scene, and it's just not a good look, right? And I'm trying to rehab the reputation of this laundromat, and she's out there screaming at somebody, right? So, but I was desperate at that time. I needed somebody to come in and clean every day, and she was there, and she did a good job cleaning, but not the right culture fit, right?
Yeah.
So having clearly defined roles, standard operating procedures or tasks or whatever checklists, and then also your values or your culture, and then holding people accountable to that, I think that's the best thing you can do when it comes to employees in my book.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Yeah. So again, I mean, clearly defining or making sure everybody's on the same page, and then clear communication, right? I like Ray Dalio. in his principles book. He talks a lot about, just having this honesty where people can voice the problems that are coming up. People can voice how they feel. Listen, I'm a big proponent of that because if you don't know as the owner, like what's going on, then it's hard to, trying to get to a point where you're guiding the culture, you're the visionary, you're leading the company. And if you don't know what's going on with your employees, it's really hard to do that. So being able to communicate with your employees in a way where they feel like they can share how they're feeling. The worst thing that can happen, and this happened to me one time, the worst, and I was like, never again will this happen. But the worst thing is you have a really great employee, which is hard to find, who leaves because of a problem you weren't even aware of. And so you didn't even have a chance to remedy the situation, right? And so you want to have a culture where you can communicate open and honestly with them about, hey, I need you to do this. This was off the mark, or you did a great job of this, and try to focus as much as possible on the positive stuff, but also a culture where your employee feels like they can say, hey, I think you dropped the ball here, or I need this, or I have this problem, or this employee is not pulling their weight, or whatever the case may be, right? And that open communication is, again, easier said than done, all of this stuff, but that's what I'm striving for.
Yeah, totally love Ray Dalio's book Principles. What was he saying in that book? Was it radical candor? What was he saying?
Yeah, I was trying to think of it when I was
Yeah.
talking, but it's along that line. It's extreme
Transparency or something.
honesty or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
transparency, radical transparency. I think that was it.
Yeah.
That might have, I don't know. Somebody's gonna know. Somebody put it in the comments or something.
Yeah. Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Okay, so here's kind of where I'm at with balance right now is I'm not sure that I'm 100% sold on this, but this is where I'm at right now. So I'd be open to hearing what you think about it and what anybody else out there is, because I'm always, trying to improve. But where I'm at with balance is that I look at balance over a longer period of time. I know a lot of people are looking for balance, day to day or at least over a week. And I know the employee sort of mindset is balance in terms of, hey, I work 9 to 5 or whatever. I'm off in the evenings, I'm off on the weekends, right? And they protect that. And I think there's nothing wrong with that or anything. But for me and being on the entrepreneurial journey, I extend out that timeline. And there are periods of time where I am just head down, focusing on my business or my investments or a project that I'm working on, something like that, to move the needle, to make progress, to get something jump started or next to the next level. And then there's times where I'm pretty hands off, and it's not necessarily a weekend. Our family did 2 months in Europe last summer. It was great. We traveled all around. We stayed in Nice for a month. I did an Ironman out in Nice. It was great. Traveled around Italy and a few other places. It was awesome. And then there's times where I'm just like head down focusing. So I look at balance over a longer period of time. And then the other thing too is that sometimes I just get excited about stuff, and I used to actively try to downplay that so that I could focus on the things I needed to do. And now I more try to go with those things because I'm like, if I have momentum and if this is something that's really going to help my business go forward or my investments go forward, I'm just going to roll with it. And if I'm super excited about it and I lose track of time, I'm in that deep work, right?
Yep.
I'm just going to
Real
roll
new.
with it and find balance later on down the line.
Yeah, great book, Deep Work by Cal Newport. How much professional development have you invested in yourself? Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, quite a bit. Quite a bit. I'm in a few groups. Dollar amounts. I probably spend 25 or $30,000 a year, dollar wise. But I'm in a couple groups. I'm in a group called Go Abundance, with a bunch of entrepreneurs and real estate investors. I'm in a group called Brand Builders Group as well, helping build a personal brand, an online brand, and a couple other mastermind type groups. And then I do some education stuff every year as well. Again, trying to put practice what I preach in terms of the best investment you can make is in yourself. If I'm not investing in myself, both time and money, I can't expect to get to the next level anytime soon. So that's where I'm at. And then also lots of books and podcasts and all that stuff too.
Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've hired some coaches, and both kind of personal development and business coaches and again, mastermind type groups, which isn't exactly coaches, but there's coaching that happens in those groups a lot.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
I don't. I have a couple of different, I guess I'll call them like small groups kind of. There's sort of informal board of directors where we'll talk through the business, and they'll kind of help guide stuff and give me direction and make sure I'm doing what I say I'm doing and that kind of thing. But they're not official board of directors.
Right, Jordan, we're on to our final five questions. What do you think's the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Honestly, for me, the hardest thing has been riding the ups and downs. Like owning a business is not for the faint of heart.
Mm.
And part of that growth, I think, is figuring out how to manage emotions along the way, because there can be some high highs and some low lows. And it's tough not to actually quit. I feel like I want to quit at some point every week. And weirdly, a lot of times I feel like I want to quit right after I've had like hit some big milestone or had a big week of sales or something like that. I don't know what that's all about, but emotions are just up and down, and that's one of the toughest things, I think.
Favorite business book would just help you the most?
That's a tough one because I've read a lot of books. I'm actually trying to pare back on the books and be more action oriented. I'm a firm believer, action is what leads you to achieving any goals that you have. You can learn, learn, learn. And I see a lot of people who get stuck in that sort of learning loop, which is great for a small period of time, but I try to default to action. It's one of my values, default to action. So all that to say, it's hard to pick one book, but I guess if I was going to put one for right now in the phase that I'm in right now is Buy Back Your Time. I'm working on leveling up the roles that I'm playing. I am too involved in things that I don't need to be involved in anymore. My businesses.
Any great podcasts or online learning tools used for your own professional development?
Listen, I mean, this podcast is far and away the best. So if you haven't listened to all like 700 episodes or however many there are, get to work. You really don't need to listen to any other ones.
Thanks,
This
Jordan.
is the one right here. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, I've listened to other ones. I don't want to say a waste of time because I should have been listening to yours, but I've been listening to a lot of like Alex Hormozy stuff
He's great.
lately. I
Yep.
like the way he's approaching stuff. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of podcasts I've been listening to, but that's one. Lewis Howes I really like. A little less on the business side, a little more on the personal side. Ed Milet, I like his stuff as well. There's some other ones out there too, but those are some of the big ones.
Yeah, I listen to Alex every day pretty much when he comes out. The other one I listen to, just gotten into the last 6 months, you may be interested in, is the Marketing School podcast with Neil Patel and Eric. It was really good.
Yeah,
About 15, 20 minutes, pretty funny, but a lot of great advice in there, general marketing,
yeah,
an online business.
yeah. I've been following Neil Patel for a long time too. Mostly on YouTube. I haven't listened to his podcast, but
Yeah.
a lot of his YouTube stuff too. Great stuff.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Well, for me, I guess any tool that's helping me do the books is the tool for me. So even just something I use a CPA now, but even just something as simple as QuickBooks, doing the books, like every year I have to like prep all my stuff to send over to my CPA. I mean, I'm kind of doing that, but there's one day that I make my big push and send everything. It's like the worst day of the year for me, and I have to like set aside the whole afternoon to like decompress and like I can just no rules for me on that day. I'll whatever I need to do to feel better about myself, I'll do it. I think that's a holdover from when I had to do those taxes and knew I was going to be losing a ton of money and it was going to show that. But for whatever reason, doing the books is not my cup of tea. So even if it's just QuickBooks or FreshBooks or something like that, obviously if you could hire a CPA, even better. But just a simple tool to help with the books that's what I'd recommend.
I've just thought of two other podcasts I'll send through to you that we've done. I think you will enjoy. Susan Toft here in Australia. I think she's in Brisbane or Sunshine Coast. She's got the Laundry Lady. She launched that probably 10 years ago. It's a platform doing about 6 million top line when we recorded that earlier this year. And I just saw on LinkedIn the other day, they're already in New Zealand a couple of years ago, but they've just launched in Canada as well. So it's kind of in your
Nice.
service, but it's in
Yeah.
Laundromats, but I think you'd enjoy that one. She's a real go-getter. And the other one is Rel West that I had on. She oscillates between, her and her husband live between Alaska and Hawaii. And their real estate mentor in the 80s. Can you ever guess who that may have been? Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably Rich Dad, Poor Dad over there.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they owned hundreds, if not, over 1,000 properties themselves. Sold 3 or 4 businesses, and again, she's a real go-getter. I'll send that podcast through to you as well. I think
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that.
Finally, my favorite question: what would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 11 years ago?
I don't know who said this phrase, but whoever said it, it was like game changer for me. Again, borrow someone else's 10,000 hours.
Mm.
Right? Like again, I had that sort of lone wolf mentality, partly because I couldn't find somebody, but I I didn't search hard enough. I wouldn't get into a new business without borrowing somebody else's 10,000 hours anymore. I just know how much money and emotional damage it would have saved me if I had borrowed somebody else's 10,000 hours. So that's what I would tell myself is like, hey, don't get into this business until you found somebody who can help guide you through the process and make sure you do it right the first time. I'm a huge believer that for most small businesses, if you get it right the first time, sky's the limit for you. You can be off to the races. Just don't get it wrong the first time. You don't even have to hit a home run, I don't think. I think for small businesses, one of the beauties of them is a base hit for a small business sends you off to the races. And so get that base hit, borrow somebody else's 10,000 hours. I mean, obviously you've got Troy here in the podcast and tons of knowledge there, but reach out to him, somebody who's doing something that you want to do, that knows something about, that can guide you through it. I just know I, I say now, and I genuinely mean this. If me back then could have had a 15-minute conversation with me today, it would have saved me 6 figures easy. 15 minutes is all it would have taken.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for your time today, Jordan. Great to chat. Awesome journey. You quit as a pastor, then in 2014, overpaid for your first laundromat in gang territory in East LA. Bought a second site and learnt your way to success. Now doing over 50 grand US dollars a month in sales, about a 45% margin, so 22 grand a month profit across all the sites, several sites with some with partners. Then fell into a successful membership model with some online courses helping other owners, laundromat owners, learn, all those thinking of getting into it and living the life now in beautiful Hawaii there with your family.
Right. That's right. Hey, can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah, go for it.
If this is somebody's very first time listening to your podcast, where should they start for the next episode? Like you have so many episodes, it can feel super overwhelming.
Yep.
Where should they start listening to your podcast?
Oh, now you asked me to pick a favorite child.
Well, it doesn't have to be a favorite, but is there a good start place?
Well,
obviously this one's going to be your favorite, so maybe a second.
Of course, it's in going straight to the pool room, as we say here in Australia, in the top 10. It is a great comedy movie in Australia where that saying came from, but probably it depends obviously what the person, where they're at, but generally I'd say if you wanted to get to know me and a little bit more, I think obviously one of my favorites was one I did with my dad probably a bit over 5.5 years ago. It was like episode 20 or 30 or something, one of those early ones. And I learnt a lot about my dad because he's quite a quiet and reserved person. And I thought he wasn't much of a risk taker. And 2 things he told me in that cast I could not believe. So that's a good one to start with. And then the other ones I said before, Rel West, Susan Toft, all great as well.
Yeah. Oh, that's money. I mean, that's the one I'm going to go listen to today after with your dad. I wish my dad passed away, and I wish I had a podcast interview with my dad and talking to him. So that's super meaningful there. I appreciate you sharing that.
No worries. Thanks, Jordan.
No problem. Thank you. My pleasure.
And for our audience, we'd greatly appreciate a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. More reviews means we bubble up higher in iTunes, etc. So more business owners looking for podcast help with their growth will find us.